How many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to 14P Fantasy. I am your host, Justin Wright. Today, we're talking Week 9 streaming options. Before we get into it, though, remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, drop a comment if you have questions on start sits or just want to say, hey, great job, Justin. You know, any of that stuff. So let's get into it. Well, number one on our list, Tua Tagovailoa versus the Houston Texans. And Tua was on our QB start sit video that came out on Friday, but I no longer think he's a must start because at the time, Devontae Parker was active. He wasn't on IR. Now he is. So he can knock Tua down a peg or two maybe, but still against Houston, he's probably a quarterback that should be in lineups. The matchup is ideal. There's maybe a little bit of extra juice with all the trade rumors and everything and all of that finally passing. And he still has a great connection with Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki. Again, Tua is 57% rostered and has a good chance to finish as a top 12 quarterback this week. The rushing has been there recently, 20 yards or more on the ground 2 of the last 3 weeks. And then the week he didn't do that, he scored a touchdown. So he's getting you points outside of passing, which is what you need for, top 12 consistency. And, if Tua doesn't play Buffalo last week, or if he throws a passing touchdown, he's a top 12 quarterback again. That would be 3 straight weeks. So Tua is primed. He's playing great football. I think he's a very viable streaming option. But, number 2 on our list is Tyrod Taylor, the quarterback on the other side of the field this week. Look, Tyrod's not the best quarterback in the NFL. That's not news. He's not, he's a very average NFL quarterback. But when it comes to fantasy, he produces. Again, 2 starts this year, 26 points in week 1, on pace for 30 almost in week 2, had just under 20 at halftime. The rushing is still there for Tyrod Taylor, and that's what I care about. 40 yards in week 1, 15 yards and a touchdown in week 2. That kind of rushing floor, it doubles what Tua's doing, and it also just raises the ceiling. So I don't think Tyrod breaks your back in any way, even if he does flop. But he does have access to a 30-point ceiling against a very bad Miami defense. Plus, he's a guy that could give you 5 to 10 points just rushing alone. So that is why Tyrod, do I think he is a guaranteed top 12 quarterback? No, absolutely not. But if you lose Kyler Murray, Tyrod Taylor is guaranteed almost to be on your waiver wire, and that's who I'd rather replace him with, over someone like, say, Teddy Bridgewater or, Jimmy G or whoever else may be out there. I'll take the shot on the guy with the rushing upside just because, it feels safer. And again, the ceiling is a lot greater than someone like Jimmy Garoppolo or Teddy Bridgewater, I think. All right, to our wide receivers. And both these wide receiver plays are really in 12-team leagues, 2 flexes. You're looking at deep rosters or deep starting lineups. But Van Jefferson, just to begin with, needs to be rostered at a higher clip than 46%. I mean, back-to-back weeks, he's got 13 total targets. He's playing 80% of snaps in a great offense. Deshaun Jackson is now gone. That alone means he probably should be rostered because they use all 3 wide receivers. Yes, Cooper Kupp is the alpha there, but Van Jefferson's been relevant, with double-digit points each of the last 2 weeks. And honestly, he probably should do it again in week 9, especially against Tennessee. Worst defense in the NFL as far as covering wide receivers. Just under 50 points a game there, you can see. And honestly, I mean, yeah, Cooper Kupp is probably going to take 35 of those 47 points, but I do think the Rams just kicked the crap out of the Titans without a Derrick Henry. They're playing 36-year-old Adrian Peterson. It's going to line up well for Van Jefferson. Again, he's still a deep play just because the floor is rock bottom, but the ceiling is a lot more appealing than some other guys you might find on your waivers. All right, number 2, as far as wide receivers go, we have Bryan Edwards versus the New York Giants. And Bryan Edwards is only relevant right now because of the horrible mistake Henry Ruggs made, and, that's all we really need to say about that. But he now steps into a role or should see an uptick in targets. That's really 5 to 7 targets a game that are now available. Do I think Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow take all of those targets? Absolutely not. So I think Bryan Edwards now steps into a potentially 6 to 7 targets a week kind of role. And in deep, deep leagues, I'm talking 14 team or 12 team leagues with 3 flexes, something crazy. Bryan Edwards has a shot to be relevant. And I'm not playing him in a 10 team league. But when you're looking for targets in those deeper leagues, you're just looking for guys that are going to see the ball thrown their way. I do think Bryan Edwards falls into that category. And if he scores a touchdown, he automatically pays off because, again, he's really your last player in your starting lineup, or at least he should be. So Bryan Edwards, not a ton of confidence there, but in deep leagues, you can see the path to success potentially in week 9. All right, moving on to our only tight end of the week, Jared Cook versus Philly. And yeah, the roster percentage is high. He's not a true streamer in that sense. He's rostered at 67% over on Sleeper. But it's really tough to ignore the matchup, so he's worth highlighting. Again, Philly has just been torched by tight ends all season, allowing 17 points a game. And if you know the tight end landscape, 17 points a game is really your tight end 1 every single week, or at least a top 3 tight end. So does Jared Cook get all of those points? Potentially. You know, you can kind of go with narrative on this one where the Chargers just got beat down by the Patriots. They're going to come out angry. Philly is bad. They got a crappy defense. And honestly, Jared Cook's still seeing, a 14% target share. His average depth of target for a tight end, is up at 8.7, which is fairly high. So he has the big play ability. He has some red zone ability, some touchdown upside as well. If you're just scrambling, Dawson Knox is still out. I'm okay filling that slot with Jared Cook. He has the upside of a top 10 tight end, but you have to know when you play him, he also has the floor, not the downside, the floor of, like a top 30 tight end. Like it's Jekyll and Hyde. It's all over the place. I do think this is the week though. Jared Cook gets back on track against the Philadelphia Eagles. And to close us out, there's not a lot of streaming options for defense this week. So I get it. 67% is not a low percentage. They were like 20% added this Wednesday. So everybody's aware of the matchup they have ahead of them. And it's the Atlanta Falcons. And right now the Falcons allowing 8.5 points a game to opposing defenses. And the Saints defense, they're the number 3 scoring defense on the year. So the fact that they're 67% rostered is wild. But what they've done this season is just spectacular. They have 2 sacks in every game but 1 this year, and they forced a turnover in every single game but 1. So they are getting points back regardless of how many they allow. They find ways to score fantasy points in terms of sacks and turnovers. And on top of it, the Falcons offense is just lost. Obviously, no Calvin Ridley. He has stepped away, potentially retiring. And without him, Matt Ryan was terrible. 2 interceptions. He's got 3 interceptions over his last He has 3 interceptions over his last 3 games. It's been bad for Matt Ryan. They haven't been able to hold on to the ball. They haven't scored a lot. I don't know if it gets better, in the second week without Calvin Ridley. So the New Orleans defense really has a chance to be the number 1 scoring defense on the week. So if they're still out there in your leagues, go and add them. They're a viable add, and the ceiling and floor are both pretty high this week. All right, guys. That is all we have. As always, subscribe to the YouTube. Follow me over on Twitter at Justin_14P. If you got start sit questions, drop them below. We got streamer questions, trade questions, whatever it may be. Drop it in. We'll answer as many as we can before Sunday and, leading up to kickoff. All right, guys. As always, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.
How many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.